Flameo Hotman, welcome back to Look What You Learned. I'm the last soup bender, but you can call me Jack. When it comes to fantasy magic systems, Avatar: The Last Airbender has one of the best. It's incredibly simple. Some people are born with the ability to manipulate one of the four elements, and each element also comes with a variety of sub-skills and specialized abilities that can be learned. It's a really cool system, one that's led many fans to imagine what kind of bender they would be if they were ever isekai'd into the verse. But here's the thing. If you lived in that world, there's no guarantee that you would be a bender. As far as I can remember, we never get a formal breakdown on the bending versus non-bending population. However, just based on what we see on screen, it seems like the majority of the people in that world aren't benders. So yeah, even if you got to be part of the world, there's a good chance you ain't getting any awesome elemental powers. However, just because non-benders don't have access to their universe's main magic system, it doesn't mean they're completely out of luck in the superpower department. Throughout the franchise, we see several skills and abilities that aren't related to bending, but could be considered superpowers, and I felt it was high time for someone to make a list of them, and so here we are. Now, full disclosure, I've only watched the shows, I haven't read the books or the comics, so it's very possible that I'm missing some information, and if so, leave a civil comment filling me in. Before we begin, I gotta clarify what counts as a superpower. After all, this is a fantasy cartoon universe, meaning that we routinely see people do some pretty crazy feats of physical fitness. You know, things like jumping 10 feet into the air, slicing through solid rock, launching projectiles with extreme power and accuracy. In our world, those things would be superhuman, but with cartoon physics, it's all run-of-the-mill stuff. So for the purposes of this video, I'm going to be focusing on things that have some kind of supernatural component to them. We'll start with the most well-known non-bending ability in the series, chi blocking. Chi blocking is, as the name suggests, the ability to disrupt the flow of chi through a person's body by creating blockages in the pathways through which it moves. Chi is a real important part of life in the Avatar universe, and it's not just magic energy. I mean, it is something kind of metaphysical or spiritual, but it also seems to be part of regular biology, and messing with its flow can cause real physical problems like pain, weakness, and paralysis. Some people, such as Ty Lee and later on the Equalists, learn how to create these harmful blocks using quick, precise strikes along their opponent's chi network. We don't really get an in-depth explanation as to how it works, but at a glance it seems like you just have to poke the right spot with the right amount of pressure, and boom, part of the body is disabled. Now obviously that in and of itself is pretty nifty in combat, however it gets even better when you realize that it can do more things to benders. See, chi is more or less what makes bending work, so by futzing with the bender's chi, you can weaken or even fully disable their bending. Temporarily at least. So yeah, it's a pretty useful ability. Like I said before, we don't get a detailed description of how exactly the chi is blocked. Like, is it really just hitting the right spot, or is there more to it? I've seen some people speculate that in order for it to work, the blocker has to transmit a bit of their own chi into the opponent with each strike. And I mean, that would make sense, but as of now, that's just a theory. Whatever the secret is, it seems like anyone can theoretically learn it. At least, there's nothing to suggest that it requires some rare inborn power. Okay, so chi blocking is pretty cool, but it's not the only chi-related superpower available to both benders and non-benders. If a person has a deep enough understanding of chi and spiritual energy, then they can gain the ability to not only block another person's energy, but also read it and gain information from it. We see this best from a dude named Guru Pathik. He was able to read Appa's chi in order to find out why the bison was so defensive and angry. It's not clear how much information he got from this, like did he see everything he went through, or was it just general vibes? We don't know, but either way, it's pretty cool. However, that's not the only trick that he has. See, in Avatar, all things are connected, and if two beings have a particularly strong bond, it's possible to sense the location of one by reading the other's energy. For example, by reading Appa, Pathik was able to sense that Aang was in Ba Sing Se. Also, the animation kind of makes it seem like he beamed the information into Appa's mind, but that could just be a little animation flourish. Aang does something similar in the swamp when he uses his connection to all the trees to find Appa and Momo. And beyond those two, I don't think we see anyone else do this kind of connection reading. There is another ability that could be related to chi, that is, if it even exists. What do I mean? Well, some characters in the series claim to be able to see auras. In case you don't know what auras are, they're usually portrayed as some kind of metaphysical field or cloud that surrounds a person's body, and by reading its appearance and or feel, you can get information about their physical and spiritual state. Sounds like chi reading, right? Well, the thing is, we don't actually know if auras are a real thing, let alone if anyone can read them. Not only do we never see one, whenever it comes up in the show itself doesn't seem to take them seriously. For example, when Ty Lee makes comments about a person's aura, it comes off more like a character quirk rather than an actual ability. Then in Legend of Korra, Kaya says that she can notice a change in Bumi's aura, but only after finding out that he's become an airbender. I think that's what makes me doubt their existence the most. Nobody ever seems to gain any actual information from reading auras. So yeah, not sure if this one is real, but if it is, it doesn't seem to require any kind of bending to work. Are you sick of me talking about chi and spiritual energy yet? Well, too bad, because our next non-bending power is also very spiritual in nature. However, it has less to do with energy and more with the actual spirit world. When you hear spirit world, your mind probably goes to some kind of afterlife or ghost dimension, but that's not really what the spirit world of Avatar is. Instead, it's a parallel world inhabited by non-human and non-physical creatures called spirits. So yeah, it's not really a place humans go to naturally. However, that doesn't mean that they don't have ways of getting in, which brings me to spirit travel. The ability for a person to project their soul into the spirit world is something we saw Aang do several times in The Last Airbender. At the time, it seemed to be an Avatar-specific power. However, in Legend of Korra, it was revealed that there are other people who can do it, and it's kind of implied to be a skill that anyone can theoretically learn. We don't really get a lot of info regarding how to learn this ability. Obviously, it requires meditation and spiritual knowledge. However, there's something more to it, as we see that the airbending master Tenzin wasn't able to spirit travel, while his teenage daughter Jinora could. She could also project her spirit around the physical world. However, that seems to be a special airbending ability, which is sometimes called spirit projection. We know that spirit travel isn't specific to airbenders, as we see the earthbender Aiwei do it, and it's kind of implied that Unalaq and maybe Iroh could spirit travel in some way. Now, technically, I don't believe we ever see a non-bender spirit travel. However, I personally have a hard time believing that only benders can do it, since we've already established that non-benders can access spiritual abilities. Once you get to the spirit world, humans are able to pull off a few sick tricks as long as they know how. Their emotions will have a tangible effect on the environment as well as the spirits that inhabit it. Zahir was also able to teleport, and he could exert some control over his body in the physical world. Now, he was an airbender at the time, so it's possible that those were bending-related skills, but I personally don't believe it. I feel like they're more a way to demonstrate his knowledge of the spirit world and how it works, to set him up as a more dangerous villain. While you're in the spirit world, you actually have the chance to pick up some extra tricks, so long as you can befriend the right spirit. Spirits have the ability to enter the bodies of humans, and this can be exploited to give said humans new abilities. Actually, this is the mechanism that created the Avatar in the first place, when regular human Wan touched the cosmic time stream, while the ancient spirit Rava was inside him, thus fusing them together. Even before they merged, Rava was able to give Wan the power to switch between the elements, as well as temporarily bend all four. Later, Unalaq does the same thing with Vatu, and while he doesn't get more elements, since Vatu didn't have the power to use them, he could turn into a giant kaiju and shoot laser blasts. Beyond that, I don't believe we see any other instances of human spirit power combos. I mean, we do see a couple of people who are physically changed by temporary possessions, but I don't know if that qualifies as a power. Okay, let's move on from the spirit world. Also, I'm not going to touch on the time Korra became a giant spirit megazord with laser powers, because I still don't 100% know what that was all about. Okay, so this next entry is kind of cheating, because there doesn't actually appear to be anything supernatural about it. However, I had to include it because I personally believe it's one of the most slept-on abilities in the entire series. It's also one of the darkest, even rivaling bloodbending. I know what you're saying. What's darker than controlling another person's body? Well, to that I say, controlling their mind, which is something that we see from one of the shadiest organizations of all time, the Dai Li. This secret police force has a lot of methods for maintaining control in the capital, but if they encounter a particularly rowdy subversive, they can literally change their personality, rewrite their memories. They can even turn them into a sleeper agent. It's everything the CIA wanted from MK Ultra, And what's really weird is that, like I said, it doesn't seem to require any supernatural assistance. To be fair, we don't really know exactly how it works. All we see is the first steps, which involve putting the target into a hypnotic trance using repetitive words and images. But beyond that, who knows? It could involve drugs or surgery, or could be as simple as just hypnotic suggestion. Whatever the case, it doesn't seem to involve bending or spiritual mumbo jumbo. Now, I know some people are going to say that this isn't that powerful, and to that I say, they made it so that a single sentence put someone into a murderous trance. Like, imagine if Azula had access to that technique. Instead of brainwashing a street thug, do it to a bunch of refugees heading to the enemy's capital city, or captured soldiers who had returned to their base. This technique had the potential to cause some real chaos, and the Dai Li used it to make Ju Dis. What a waste. So that's all the extra abilities that are definitely real in one way or another. Now let's finish off this video with one that may or may not actually exist. In the first season of Avatar, we met a character called Aunt Wu, who claimed to be able to divine the future through methods like interpreting the shape of clouds and throwing bones into a fire and seeing how they crack. It sounds ridiculous, but apparently her predictions are so accurate that her whole town became reliant on them in order to function. So she's the real deal, right? Well, while the show does kind of leave it up in the air, it treats her abilities with a lot of skepticism, to the point where it's implied a lot of her success comes from a combination of self-fulfilling prophecies, coincidences, and predictions that are so vague they can't possibly fail. But at the same time, there's no evidence to suggest that she's got at least a little bit of juice. After all, it's not like this would be the one and only instance of foresight in the series. People actually see the future more than you might realize. In Season 2, Aang basically saw the future when he sees a vision of Toph in the swamp. And actually, if that hadn't happened, he most likely wouldn't have ever met her. Beyond that, both Iroh and Patik claim to have had prophetic visions of the future, which later came true. Isn't it possible that Wu is able to pick up on some real-world vibes? After all, some of her predictions were on point. Her bone divination told her that Aang would be involved in a great battle, which would be weird to make up for a 12-year-old boy. Look, I'm not saying all of her predictions are accurate visions of the future. After all, we see her clearly make something up to give Aang hope about his dating life. I'm just saying that maybe she does actually see something sometimes. And that, dear learners, is every special ability not related to bending, I think. Like I said, there's probably others that pop up in other media. If I missed any, let me know in a comment. While you're at it, do the other stuff. I'll have more content for you eventually, but for now, look what you learned.